Hello everybody, and a big welcome back to all my subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, why not? What's wrong with you? Um, right, it's the start of another project. I could never get the GPIO pins on that RISC processor to work, and so I've decided to do another project that I've been looking at for a long time, and that project involves this particular CPU, which is it's a clone actually of a Motorola 64K CPU. Now, I'm basically going to build my own homebrew computer board, and I started that last week, but as you can see, the wiring became quite quickly a mess, and I'm not particularly good at soldering anyway. I'm more of a software guy than a hardware guy. So I've decided to scrap this, and I'm going to change it over to do wire wrapping in the future. So I will be doing something similar, but I will be using wire wrap so that I can just wire wrap these rather than do soldering, because my soldering skills are not up to standard. And quite honestly, this is probably, if I get this working, I'll do a PCB probably of it, but as it stands, I just want to do it on this perf board. Now, the idea here is that I have the CPU, I have ROM chips, I have RAM chips, I have a VIA, I have a UART, some logic stuff, multiplexer, clock, and some other things. Now, to work out how I needed to do that, what I did was I started with this pinout. Now you can see here that I've put the chips that I'm planning to use. As I went through this, I put that's the CPU, and then these are the two, these are actually RAM chips that I plan to use as ROM, and then these are RAM chips, and then this is a VIA or a general IO. This is the UART. And then I've got a couple of things that are slightly different from most sort of homebrew builds. I'm going to plug in an Arduino here, but that Arduino is mainly for a thing called mod VGA, which will give me VGA keyboard and mouse input and output, and all of that will be done via the SPI protocol. So the Arduino will control that, but I've also got an SD card adapter, which I can show you that quickly. That's this. So this again uses the SPI interface, and so I can plug that in, and then I can effectively have a hard drive. Similar sort of thing with most of the other components. I had to get a 3 to 5 volt to 3 volt adapter for some things, but back to the pinout. Basically, I can use the SD card adapter. I'm going to put in a real-time clock, but that uses IC2 rather than SPI. Then I've got the LCD display, which I'm going to use on boot up and things. I've got a nice 4-line LCD display, but again, it uses just the 4 pins, and it uses the SPI interface. I also ordered some reset chips because I didn't want to mess around with a reset circuit. But the LCD display, and then eventually I hope to put a network card. I haven't ordered this yet, but assuming I get all this other stuff in, I will plug in a network card. I've got a multiplexer, which is going to choose the chip select to tell the computer which thing it's talking to, or the CPU to what it's talking to. I've got an AND gate, which is for some sort of glue logic, and then a 6-pin header, which I will be using as a serial port interface. So on my desktop computer, I do have a USB to serial connection, and then the idea here is that I will just plug this into the pin header on the chip, and happy days. And I can use it via USB into my desktop. So that's the theory, and I've been basically working on this for a while now. Most of the connections are as you would expect: VCC, ground, and then the clock where required. And actually this clock is defunct because I'm running the clock from the VIA chip, because I need this to be 1 megahertz, 1.8 something megahertz for the baud rate, but this one is 4 megahertz, possibly 8 when I do it. Anyway, and then the reset switch, which will go into the reset chip, which I'll put in later. Basic data, basic address lines, and then this is memory mapped IO, because I'm using these 4 higher bits of the memory to do the multiplexer decoding. And this will give me, I think, 16 possible combinations, but at the moment I'm only using 5 combinations. Most of the switching between devices will happen here for these sort of SPI I2C devices. Most of those will go through the and be selected by the VIA chip here. So I've been basically working through this, where things need to be wired and how they need to do it. I decided to do it this way because I just felt that sort of KiCad or any of those, it was just going to take me too much time, and while thinking about it, I just felt more comfortable just typing it out and then just doing a bit of color coding. This is relatively straightforward, and I can, when I go to the wiring, I can just look in this spreadsheet and do it. Bit old-fashioned, but it works. So that is basically the plan. Then once I have wired this up and I've got it working, then the idea here is that I will do the software on my desktop with a cross compiler, put it into the ROM, and do things. So I want to get onto the software. So I would quite like to get this over with as soon as possible. But I've ordered things, and some stuff coming from China, so another couple months, weeks before I would be able to get this bit completed. So there'll be a bit of a lag for any YouTube uploads. But once I get this completed, I want to start doing things like the post and the bootloader. So the bootloader obviously starts a memory address, comes into the CPU and starts executing. The CPU is going to execute the post, which is power on self-test. The power on self-test should then go and set the baud rate on the UART. It'll set up the input-output on the VIA chips, do a memory check and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully output all of that to the LCD display, checking memory, blah, 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 and then that's all done. Any interface work will be done via the serial in and out, from the desktop program. So the plan is to write a bootloader, and initially the bootloader, I just wanted to flash some LEDs, which I'll put on here so that I know I'm loading it into the right place. After I do that, I will do the posts, which is the power on self-test, which will check the memory. It will set the correct settings on the VIA chip. It'll set the correct settings on the UART. It'll set up the timers that are required on the VIA, because there's a timer requirement, and so that clock on timer on the VIA will run the clock on the UART, for example. And it'll just set up all of that sort of stuff during the bootloader and power on self-test. Then at that point, My next plan is to create a monitor program. So this isn't a full-on operating system, but it would let you, it's kind of like Wasmon or the tutor program that you used to get with the M68K motherboards. That would just let you examine memory addresses. It would let you execute programs from memory or whatever. So my goal is to not write an operating system, but to write a monitor software that will let me do the initial sort of playing about with the system and write some small bits of code that'll let me trial the whole thing and make sure that it all works. And then I would like to progress along to actually writing an operating system. Now, it's not going to be, Ubuntu or Macintosh. It's like, a simple command line thing. But I would like to just basically roll my own operating system just from a knowledge point of view and know how it works and having done one. Now, the other thing that I'm going to have to do with this is, because of these protocols that I'm using here for IC2 and for SPI, obviously none of this is built into these old CPUs, so I'm going to have to do a lot of bit banging. So I will get the, some experience in doing bit banging with the assembly language code. My plan is to write all of this in assembly. Obviously, you could do a cross compile from, C or whatever. No problem with this. With this setup, you could do a cross compile from C. So it's not like you have to do that. But I would prefer to do it because I wanted to do the assembly language level programming. So that is it in a nutshell. That is my plan. I will post as much as I can and keep you updated. But as I say, I've still got parts on order. Some of this stuff isn't going to be coming in from China for a few weeks. Mainly the wire wrapping. I've got some wire wrapping, but I don't have all of the tools and things, and I don't have the pens for the board, so I don't have the pen. I don't know if you're familiar with wire wrapping, but these pens stick out a good inch here, and then you wrap the wires around each one. So none of this soldering gubbins. I'll be back to wire wrapping. Hopefully that'll make the build a lot quicker, and then we can get on to doing a bit of software development for a bootloader, a post, a monitor, and eventually maybe even an operating system. So if you're interested in this sort of stuff, please like and subscribe and all that good jazz. I am sorry that I haven't done as many posts as I had previously, but I've been really busy. So thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.